Okay, once more. So welcome everybody to the session on the EU MSP platform, or the so-called European MSP assistance mechanism. I know that there are still people probably around enjoying lunch, but since we do have quite a number of presentations, given the fact that we will sort of cover MSP European-wide, I think that it may be worthwhile starting. Let me introduce you to the session. So my name is Angela Schultz-Zehden, and I'm from s.Pro, and we are actually also the contract leader to the MSP assistance mechanism. And I will give you a presentation, a roundup in terms of what the platform and the assistance mechanism is all about. Not only how the website looks like, but also what is the service proposition, also in the year to come, and perhaps also in the years to come. And then I will sort of give the floor to our various focal points, so to show you what kind of practices and projects and experience do we have so far on the platform covered, in terms of the Baltic Sea, and then we move to North Sea, Atlantic, towards the Black Sea, and then last but not least the Mediterranean. And the emphasis here always being that not only showing you the progress and process on MSP in those countries, but also, what kind of practices can we already show in terms of, these sea basins from these countries. In some cases, practices, even though some countries do not have the full MSP cycle yet, but there are still already practices to be shown. And also then to enter into a discussion later on, what can the Baltic Sea, how can it sort of support the MSP processes European-wide, and vice versa, of course, also. What can you gain here in the Baltic Sea region from experiences throughout Europe in MSP? And how can we jointly sort of make this platform and this European-wide service work? What can you take out of it? How could you contribute? We also do have here brochures, and so which should sort of give you an intro to the overall service. And I hope you don't do this now during the session, but I would highly invite you to sort of, whenever you are at a bus stop or whatever, it's also a nicely mobile version, so that whenever you feel bored and you want to learn something about MSP, take the opportunity and click onto msp-platform.eu. So let's start off. And so in terms of the introduction, what is this whole service about? Well, as you all know, there is the MSP directive, which is calling all EU coastal member states to have an MSP ready by 2021, and actually, which was also calling this year, to have all countries transposing already the directive into their national law, and to at least start off an MSP process. And in order to support this, the implementation of this directive, there was a call from the European Commission, and there has been a contract laid out to provide a service, ongoing assistance mechanism for those who are involved in maritime spatial planning. Emphasis is on the MSP authorities, or let's say those who are really directly involved in implementing maritime spatial planning in the related countries. That's for sure the first target group, but since it's an open and transparent website and platform, of course, everybody else who is a stakeholder, who's a researcher, who is representing a sector, who's an NGO, is of course very much invited to sort of join into this platform and also into the service delivery. So next, so the general task of this platform, which was then launched, the service only started off this January 2017, and then the website itself was launched by June during the Azores conference, and of course, you should always understand this is something which is evolving and will hopefully even look better and have better content with the more people who are joining into this exercise, in a sense. So it's an interactive information gateway, and I will introduce you into that, but it's much more. It's, a website is nice, but we are all busy people, etc. And the idea is that this is sort of forming more a kind of intranet between the team we have European-wide. We have a dedicated team of MSP experts coming from various backgrounds, as MSP is from various backgrounds. So we have a team where we have researchers, we have sort of from an engineering company, we do have from a Blue Grove company. So we have sort of also, in terms of the consortium, we really have sort of various perspectives, but we do have really dedicated people in each of the sea basins. I don't think that we can cover sort of, I don't know how many languages are now sort of spoken in all these coastal countries, but the idea is really then also to have a direct access to, when you pick up the phone, that, it's not going to an anonymous email, but that you have somebody who cares about the MSP process in your sea basin and who has also the capacity to really, link into, follow the projects, the conferences, the seminars, the various activities ongoing in the sea basin. So to pick up on that and to sort of, filter this back, and then also to have this always this vice versa communication then between our consortium, that we can say, okay, what does the MSP process in the Black Sea at the moment require? How can we feed in with the practices from the Baltic Sea or the North Sea or from wherever in order to assist that process? So what is very important is that there is a dedicated team of experts behind who are not only having the task of sort of, writing into practices and making the website work, but in fact that we actually also make it work for us as an intranet, and that you have people to talk to. Then, in fact, I will not dwell on this so much in this session, but in fact, part of the overall contract is also that every year we actually carry out one specific study, which is actually done on the basis of what is the priority need of the MSP authorities at the given time. It's not comparable to a research project because it's a one-year study and it's really applied and should sort of therefore fill a knowledge gap which is directly can be linked into the ongoing implementation MSP process. And what the MSP authorities had said, in 2015 was that they really wanted to sort of know better what are the data needs for MSP, how can data or information be used and better be used to actually implement the MSP directive in their countries. And so we set out and sort of, looked into the projects and into the MSP processes which have already been ongoing, and looked into what kind of data have planners used, and what would they have liked to use, and what also, which tools they would have liked to have, but also which are available but perhaps not known. But Bronwyn, who has sort of led this study, she will sort of, dwell on that during the session to come. I think it's tomorrow, which is sort of, on these data specifics. Next year, so that study is sort of almost concluded. It will sort of also be publicly available, and then of course also be put, in an interactive format onto the platform itself. And we will sort of, not have it just as on the shelves and, as paper, but again, sort of make it work. We are all sort of, curious what kind of study we will be tasked for next year. I will come to that later on. So what is our mission statement here? What was very important? MSP authorities are all busy people, and therefore, the idea was really to say, okay, we are offering a service, we give to them a service, rather than that we are only taking information from them and sort of, put it onto the web, what have you done, etc. But of course, in order to have this exchange mechanism, it is needed that we do have information from the various processes coming. What we can do and what we offer and what we have already done so is that we are sort of, assisting then the MSP authorities in translating and to pick out which methodologies have you used, what is a good practice, can we actually write for you a 2-page summary on what you have done, and that will sort of, go on over the course of the next year. So, and what is here very important, all this on the website is, of course, black on white, and it's very much writing and it's very much letters. But in fact, what is quite important is when you have a practice and you see it in the bottom, that you see who is actually the practice owner, from where did this practice come from, and here, so in terms of knowing who knows. And you don't have to go through the whole website. You can also just call us and say, Angela or Emiliano, can you tell me, ecosystem-based approach, is there something good around in other sea basins who I would like to organize a workshop? So can you sort of pick out for me with whom I should get in touch with? So, this very important practice, knowing the practitioners, knowing the authorities, that is sort of part of the whole game. Those, and where it's sort of more than just by accident that you have sort of come across the person here at this very nice MSP forum. So it's really this personal approach, and you will see from the website you're a bit overwhelmed perhaps at the beginning, but I mean, in fact, it's sort of the idea is that we have put a whole repository on the practices, the methodologies which are available out there already. And it's quite a number. I mean, so we have collected 58 projects. We have, I think, at the moment, 208 practices out there. But, in fact, we have really a very good searchable database, and we have very different entry points. So to get from the broad into the specific. And if you're then still lost in sort of the jungle of the website, again, I can only just urge you, send us an email or give us a phone call, and then we will also help you to sort of find the right practice. So this is how it looks like, and you may sort of have a look at it right now. And I would like to point out that this is an interactive map, by the way. Yeah, so you just click here on the Baltic Sea, and then you are in the Baltic Sea in a sense, or you are here Poland, or now when we are in Latvia, and then you will click immediately into the Latvian entry point. Then you have the database, the practice database, FAQs. You can submit a question, but you can also sort of see here which events are upcoming. That is quite important in the whole plethora of sort of MSP events, that you can not only put in there your own event, but that once you are planning your own event, please, go onto the website and check first whether there's any other event at that given time already ongoing in terms of MSP. Maybe sort of, another date may be a better choice. And then, we have actually, and that may be also of interest for some around here, that yes, there is a lot of money floating around, to promote MSP and to sort of support you in MSP efforts. This is sort of, the section where you can actually look for what kind of financing opportunities are out there. Is that something which is sort of, suitable for my idea, what I want to do? And here we do have sort of news. So this is how it looks like when, you have it on your mobile device. And then you can see that, in fact, here you go through the countries, then you see basins, the practice databases, the MSP projects and FAQs, and then, also you see the team, etc. So that's the not so interactive, but still very useful if you have it on all your sort of other devices. So that's I have already mentioned, and I think that later on you will see the faces behind that we do have a dedicated team. The whole process is managed from the beautiful seaside city Berlin, and actually we have the direct connection also to Brussels, to our contractor DG Mare, and where the Ecorys team is sitting, and then we do have, however, really sort of dedicated sea basin help desks and in these different locations. So here you see the main people who are really working together. So I had already mentioned what is on the website so far. We have I see it now. So there are even more projects on MSP. We have, however, and you can then therefore go into the projects themselves, but what is, I think, more important is that we have really then sort of split the projects up and then gone into the practice descriptions separately and counting. So here you see the database, and that's important that you can really sort of, have all types of multiple search functions. So you don't only have to go by type of practice, is it an applied one, but also type of issue. That there are these requirements in the MSP directive. So is it about ecosystem-based approach? Is it about stakeholder involvement, etc.? And then, is it relating to fishing, and where does it come from, and in which cycle of the MSP? And you could sort of theoretically, you can click all of them. And then once you have done so, you will get sort of teasers here, and then you go into the direct practice, where you have then always a 2-pager sort of telling you, that's the methodology, that is how it has been applied. And then, if you're very much interested and you have the contact person here, so either you call or you then go into yet another website very often from these practices, etc., if you want to learn more. So that's then now in terms of the project. So these are also then sort of, all listed, and then you can also go via the project approach if SimCelt, AdriPlan, there was something, BOTSI etc., then you go into this. So, and then, what is interesting here is that we have from all the countries the information, and what is important here to note, that's simply a different entry point, that here from all the European countries you do have where are they in the MSP process, you see it directly. Is there sort of here, in that case, Belgium has an MSP, it's applied, it's the planning area. And then we have gone through a whole process with the MSP authorities and asked them which practice and which project would you like to have a link to from your country side. So, and that was very different. I mean, some said, okay, we also, would like to have a link to a research project, even if that was not from an official MSP authority. Others said, no, we only want to have the very sort of, those which are very highly related to our sort of regular MSP process. So on the database, you find more practices concerning a country. Here you have the ones where the country itself, the MSP authority, has said, yes, we are very happy to show them here, and they are sort of linked to our process. Okay, I'm moving on here. So you can also have then the sea basin descriptions and, what's going on there. And this is sort of, quite important. As I said, it's, quite a lot of practices, etc. And therefore, we have now sort of then also introduced the so-called FAQ section. There are 14 different topics at the moment covered. And then we have looked into sort of the practices we have and the projects and the country features and have sort of selected which pilot plans are sort of have an element on climate change, for instance, or which practice is really directly related to stakeholder involvement. How can we answer sort of these questions? This is for sure evolving because there may be frequently asked questions, but it's not so easy to find the answer to some of these frequently asked questions. So I mean, obviously here we only have those where we have frequently asked, but also sort of that are able to answer. So I think I skipped this here a little bit because these are the funding opportunities, but for those who are around here, we also have sort of the training opportunities. This is not the master courses. This is really professional training opportunities, workshops you can go to. And then we have also the events, and you're happily invited to sort of, move on. So then we have gone through an exercise because we also moderate the European MSP expert group, and we have gone through an exercise with the MSP authorities there in terms of what are the topics which are of highest interest for them. And you can see here sort of the 14 topics they have come up with, or these are 13 because data was of course also a topic, but that's separate. And then we have sort of said, okay, which of them are sort of, really top priority, top ranking for 2017. And we have also then gone through these topics and said, okay, what kind of knowledge is actually already available? What kind of practices? So as a kind of proof of concept of the platform, and how can we link them? So that's also how this has been filtered into the FAQ section. And you can see here, that's not disclosing too much, what are sort of the differences in sort of highest priority ranking by the different countries in terms of what is sort of their immediate concern for 2017. Where would they like to have a study? Where would they like to have a workshop? Where would they like to have a conference? Obviously, because we cannot cover all the different 14 topics in one go. So it's more a roadmap, and Jacek is here, so I mean, and we are here in the beautiful Baltic Sea. VASAP, of course, has a roadmap. Helcom VASAP has a roadmap. The EU MSP process, it's good if the European expert group also have a roadmap in terms of just sort of covering all these different topics. And here, we see, what has come up top, regardless in which cycle the MSP authorities are in, is the ecosystem-based approach, as well as MSP for blue growth, or let's call it more, what are the future users and a planner should consider when doing their planning exercise, as well as sort of even though we have so much practice here from the Baltic SCOPE, etc., the issue of how can we sort of practically apply the cross-border cooperation across countries. And this is here also of interest that, this is really the European-wide platform. So we should always consider, and that's quite obvious also from sort of our assessment, that the Baltic Sea is quite specific in the sense that there has been a lot of cooperation ongoing, and this is seen as a role model, and many people are interested in other countries how to sort of, I mean, not copy it, but I mean, what to learn from that process. Yeah, and you can read yourself what may be sort of, interesting here, and I really would also like to explain that it's not as, I mean, so sector-specific aspects, that's quite interesting. There are we had the defense one here workshop before. However, there are some sectors which are really completely there are no practices simply. And, but in fact, many planners said that's not sort of the immediate highest priority for them, because in fact they are relying on what the sector ministries are telling them. So it's more the cross-sectoral approach. How can we sort of get the cross-sector integration working? Strategic environmental assessment. to my mind, that was a bit surprising, but indeed, it's sort of at the moment not really sort of the highest concern. And climate change, that's well generally of interest, but it's sort of again for pushing the MSP implementation right now. That also is simply not in terms of the highest priority for now, sort of having a knowledge exchange. In terms of here, these issues, comparative analysis of MSP systems, one has to qualify that. That is not, it's a special case because countries are extremely interested to understand better what is the legal impact, what is the process of, their fellow countries around. It's still not, really clear. And benchmarking, and especially also a benchmarking between countries which are maybe completely different countries, but which are simply similar from a geomorphological perspective. So that, it may make more sense to sort of compare countries which are relatively small with a narrow or relatively limited sea space, but with lots of uses in them. So that this can be in completely different sea basins. So what are the issues here, just as an example? And then, of course, those countries which are now just starting with the MSP process, they were the most interested in learning more on sort of how to develop the general strategy. And those which are now in the midst of it, they are, of course, not so much interested. So what's the way forward now in 2000? I mean, we are almost at the close of 2016. Is really that we have now all this on the platform, but I mean, of course, to really make it work, to get many more people knowing about it, and therefore sort of also sharing their good practices and projects and experiences, events, etc. with us. Not only to take it and download, but in fact, please interact with us. There will be a new technical study. I would assume it's among those which have now just been shown as high-ranking topics, but to then have sort of a much more direct exchange between the member states on very specific topics, and interestingly also to have so-called intervision sessions for countries which are, which are in the MSP process, and where they are saying, well, we would really like to have a workshop in our country, and where sort of 5-6 people from other countries are coming to them and really just dedicating the 1.5 days for their effort and, to assist them from their experience. So that is sort of, the move forward, and to really sort of then always work on questions you all may submit to us, and to see, how can we dig deeper into what do these practices actually mean. Yeah, so I can only invite you to promote the platform and to interact with us, to raise questions. And since time is running fast, I would like to take now, some questions if you have, before we are sort of moving on to sort of, showing what is in the Baltic Sea, etc. So are there, that is, in terms of this platform, yes.
Nerijus Blažauskas, Coastal Research and Planning Institute. I just wondering about the maintenance of the platform after the project is developed.
Yeah, good question. That was the main concern, of course, also of the member states. And I think that, I cannot speak for the Commission, but it is laid out for an initial stage of 4 years. And then we will see, that it's simply contractually wise, then there has to be sort of simply a new way of how this is done. But at the moment it is, for it's 1 year but after another, but it is still sort of the, until sort of, the first generation of MSP implementation is, over, and one wanted to sort of see how is this evolving. But indeed, that was one of the main concerns immediately raised by, yeah.
Thank you. I'm Alexandrov, and just a question, one new technical study, what does it mean? How do you select such study? And you said 1 year.
Yeah, I mean, we are contracted by the Commission, so ultimately the Commission is selecting the topic. It's also not the member states, but it's really then up to DG Mare to ultimately decide. And there are different factors coming in there. We had a big discussion yesterday already on that. And I mean, I had shown you this list of, what is the ranking, what is the priorities for the countries. One has to sort of, consider that it should be a topic which is of interest European-wide, not only to one sea basin or, one specific country. There has to be an added value, in a sense, to the European taxpayers' money. That was stressed yesterday quite a lot. And it should be something which is, again, something which is of immediate relevance for the MSP process right now, or rather by the end of 2017, that countries can really go out and work with it. So as an example, with the data study, I mean, which is now sort of almost concluded, yesterday has shown that many member states really said, well, that was extremely helpful for them. They are now dealing with sort of setting up their data infrastructure or portals or, whatever. And it was a helpful process for them to understand what are they missing, what, do they have to consider. So, I mean, in terms of, how to select, I mean, there are sort of different factors coming in. And on top of it, one also has to say that there is a world out there outside the assistance mechanism. So, I mean, of course, there are many other projects. There is also Horizon research. There are other studies commissioned by the European Commission. So obviously, one should not duplicate these efforts. And therefore, on that way, sort of see something in between. But I think it will be sort of, ultimately we will have the decision by the end of this year on what the new study will be about.
Can we get some more air here? It's super hot.
This I cannot. Okay. Okay. What can you?
Thank you. My name is Peter Hartmann from the Danish Geodata Agency. I'm also the chair of the International Hydrographic Organization's MSGI working group dealing with data and data infrastructure. Just taking your last comments into consideration, when the INSPIRE directive was established, they conducted a conceptual model, or they established a conceptual model about the INSPIRE directive, tried to identify all the stakeholders, the users, the infrastructure. And have you considered to establish like a conceptual model of MSP in order to establish the common framework, in order to make sure that all of the different participating agencies, stakeholders, having the same approach to what we are going to do with the marine spatial planning? Thank you.
Okay. For us, the framework directive is sufficient framework. So we have not, therefore then gone into, going into a kind of conceptual model and therefore supposedly telling countries what MSP is like, but to let really just assist the member states in their own efforts. So we also have deliberately avoided in also what is in the database here. We have, of course, we make a selection in a sense, is this sort of practice of relevance, the information of relevance really for an MSP process, but it's, we have not said this is best practice or super practice or good practice or whatever. We have avoided this kind of value judgment. I think it's for the user and the MSP authorities to judge on what they want to make use of, if that sort of requests an answer. Okay, I think we have sort of many more presentations to come, so I would like to sort of now invite Susanne, who will sort of, I mean, we are here in the Baltic Sea, to very shortly brief on the practices.
Yeah, thank you, Angela, for introducing the MSP platform. I'm now moving to the Baltic Sea presentation and would like to bring a short overview of the history of MSP in the Baltic, because it's a very long, actually, and show what kind of practices and projects are available on the MSP platform, and also maybe, could you please click? Ah, okay, sorry. And also raise the question whether there are already some new practices available coming from real MSPs. So the entrance point to the Baltic on the MSP platform is the sea basin. And you see the link here. They are the countries around the Baltic Sea, and this is also an entry point to the platform that you, oh my god, sorry, you can go into the Baltic Sea with the sea basin and via the countries. And the country features, Angela outlined it nicely already, they also refer to the users, the actual users, and also potential conflicts. Coming to the history of the MSP tradition in the Baltic, you see there are, of course, EU and Baltic Sea regional level politics starting in early 2000. And these are now mounting actually in the EU MSP directive and in the guidelines on ecosystem-based approach and on transboundary consultation, public participation. These political processes are framed by the projects, which also started quite early in 2002 already, which then influenced the real national MSP planning processes, like the real plans and also pilot plans. So it was a kind of ping-pong process that you had this main political process and then real input by relevant projects which provided data and brought stakeholders together and a lot of experience. So to highlight one project, maybe we don't want to judge, Angela just said it, but the one core project is Baltic Sea Plan, as this brought many experts together which were working on the project and then participated also on real plans and brought their experience into this actual processes, but was of great relevance and can't be underestimated. Of course, this project also brought a lot of data together, which were fed into real plans as well, and the same stakeholders also participated in the MSPs. So this is a really reliable and very reasonable process. Coming to the platform, you see the projects for the Baltic Sea, which are framing, as I said, the real policy process. And the projects actually are documenting the process of the pilots. And when you screen these projects, as we did for the MSP platform, then you can you gather many practices, actually more than 100 for the Baltic Sea. And as you see, we screen, for instance, of participate 12, Baltic Sea Plan 15, Plan Bosnia 2. Balance might be a bit overestimated, but we will go into it again and find out whether these 25 practices are really relevant and used in practice, and then we'll filter. So it's an ongoing process, and we always rely, of course, on you as the experts, as the interest audience, and support us with your input. And if you come across a new practice, please forward it to us. Angela mentioned already that another entry point is also via the country information. And the interesting aspect here is, this is the example of Germany, that the administration, the MSP authorities, provided input and said which projects, which practices directly influenced the MSP process in the country and which are of greatest interest for them. So you can see here an order of political relevance which might be also relevant for your daily work. Coming to special projects, I want to refer to Baltic Sea Plan. This was an interesting and key project, as I said, because it produced 31 reports. We placed only some on the platform, but it shows which high expertise flow out of this project. And again, you see here the relevant practices and pilot cases which were results of the project. One was, for instance, the practice strategic MSP for the Middle Bank, and it was so far quite of interest because it produced a strategic plan for an area where no plans have been there before, no planning. So it was a huge advantage and, of course, a chance to really avoid conflicts for the future and to go into an area. Here you see as well the project example of Participate, and you see how you come then to the relevant practices deriving from the project. Participate was also an outstanding project because it was the first time that it brought together the sectors on a transnational level and asked for their perspective in transnational workshops. And it was a core project for the guidelines on transnational cooperation and stakeholder involvement. Coming to the question whether you have practices from real plans, and here I simply would like to refrain to Latvia. We know there is no real MSP, and there is a first draft. But we have already some practices of this process which might be of relevance for you. This is an English summary of the first draft of the draft MSP, but we also have the draft environmental report, which refers to the ecosystem-based approach. So there is already some knowledge we can gain from the MSPs. The same is relevant for Finland and the Kymenlaakso region MSP, which provides some input. So the summary is that there is a high number of projects and pilot MSPs, and these projects processes are really very well documented, and one can learn from them. And now many countries are moving to the real MSPs, and it's up to you and to all involved stakeholders to provide their practices that they don't end in grey literature or similar. And now I would like to refer to first questions or how? Yeah. So if you have questions on the Baltic Sea, I'm not sure whether we have the time now.
I think we sort of, thank you, Susanne. And I think that, since many in the room are sort of coming from the Baltic Sea, it may be of sort of, more interest even, or that we move directly towards sort of the outside perspective. And I would like to invite our focal points from North Sea and Atlantic, but actually both happen to be based on the how can I call it? Not in the Black Sea, but in the UK. But because that may sort of sound weird, but it was really on the sea level that we made the distinction. So North Sea sort of being, England and Scotland, and Atlantic then sort of, Wales and Ireland, etc. We will see whether we will change this in year 2. But Stephen, so please.
What do I press here? Okay, that's a good start. Well, I'd just like to give you quite a lightning tour, really, of these 2 maritime regions in just a few moments, and pick out just a few examples of the kind of things that we're discovering as we do this work, good practice from some of the countries within these 2 regions. Just very briefly to say what I'm sure you are already very much aware of, the 2 regions in question. First of all, the Atlantic region, which of course is Europe's most oceanic sea region, and we have 5 member states looking westwards into the Atlantic region. And of course, this is a part of the European seas which is environmentally in relatively good condition, which has particular possibilities in terms of maritime development, which will be of interest to MSP as it's implemented in these member states, including some more traditional uses, but also with potential perhaps for offshore renewables, coastal tourism, and global growth in shipping as well. Oops, what have we done? There we go. Just by the way, I've not actually put screenshots from the platform website on these slides, but the link there, if you were to click on it, we won't do now as we don't have time, would take you to the relevant part of the platform. I'm worried about what I should be pressing here.
This one, yeah.
This one?
Yeah.
Yes, it works good. Okay, I won't press anything else. The North Sea is a semi-enclosed sea, of course, which opens to the Atlantic at the north and the south. 7 member states border onto the North Sea. Perhaps the most densely used maritime region of Europe. Traditionally, of course, it's had heavy usage for fishing and oil and gas. It's becoming really the epicenter, you might say, of offshore wind energy development, not just in Europe, but in the world as a whole. And of course, there are other opportunities for maritime industries out there as well as conservation demands. And this, again, is one region, a little bit like the Baltic, where there's been some transboundary work so far, not to the same extent as the Baltic, but there are significant drivers at the moment for transnational cooperation, particularly in the field of energy, renewable energy, and interconnection via a possible supergrid. So again, a key concern of interest to MSP authorities. So just to take you through these 2 regions a little bit, why not start westernmost point, northwest of Ireland, where the MSP implementation is still at a relatively early stage. But one thing which they have done very successfully, I think, is to produce an overall strategy called Harnessing Our Ocean Wealth, illustrated here. And what this does is to set out very high-level goals, really, not just for MSP, but for maritime policy in general, which you could say is perhaps where every member state should begin, by thinking at this high political level about the things which the member state in question, or the jurisdiction in question, wishes to achieve, not just through MSP, but through related tools as well. And so this, I think, is a document well worth looking at, just to see where a good starting point might be. And again, it illustrates the fact that, of course, MSP does fit within a political framework and should be attempting to achieve policy objectives which are specific to that particular setting and which have been determined at a political level. If we move south to Portugal, it's just worth saying at this point, by the way, that the Atlantic region is the one which spans northern and southern Europe and presents particular challenges, you might say, for transnational working, because northern and southern Europe have very different cultures and traditions of administration and planning. So that's just something to bear in mind as we talk, sometimes slightly glibly, about transnational cooperation, that there are very real histories, backgrounds, contexts coming together in that particular exercise. As far as Portugal is concerned, they have been really at the forefront of MSP as far as Southern Europe is concerned, and are currently working on implementation of the directive by developing a new Ministry of the Sea, which will have ultimate responsibility for MSP, and they intend to produce two types of plans: situation plans describing the overall conditions, and then allocation plans, which are more forward-looking and proposing particular distribution of activities, and various directorates which will actually have the responsibility for preparing these plans throughout Portugal, both for mainland Portuguese waters and also for the archipelagos. I mentioned that they were at the forefront of MSP, really, in Southern Europe, and one exercise which they did carry out is this one here, Plano de Ordenamento, oh dear, I'm getting this wrong already, aren't I? Do Espaço Maritime, which goes by the very nice acronym of POEM, at least from an English point of view. It's much easier to say, and yeah, it's got a certain ring to it, hasn't it? And they carried out this, what was really a pilot study, mapping out the existing knowledge as far as the mainland offshore waters were concerned, and also proposing, at again a very strategic level, the way in which certain key activities might be distributed throughout these waters. And I think what's interesting about this, and you can go into the platform website to get a bit more information about it, is that they were not afraid to look at the real cutting-edge activities, which are quite speculative perhaps at the moment, but may be important in the future. So things like macroalgae cultivation for energy generation are included within this strategy. Well, moving north again to the United Kingdom, the UK has got 4 different constituent parts, as you will be aware from a governance point of view, but the UK government takes responsibility for marine policy as a whole. But beyond that, the responsibility for marine planning has been devolved to the 4 governments for the UK. Having said that, again, there is a high-level policy document, the Marine Policy Statement, which has been agreed by all 4 governments, and again, which directs the marine planning authorities now in what they're doing. So just to zip very quickly through the different parts of the UK and pick out 1 or 2 things here. Northern Ireland, again, is at a fairly early stage as far as the UK is concerned. But one interesting thing, which you can find again through the link here, is that they have produced a statement of public participation. And what that sets out is the precise process by which coastal communities and the public in general will be given an opportunity to engage with the production of the marine plan. It sets out the methods, the mechanisms by which that participation will be achieved, the timescale and so on. And that might be a nice example for other authorities to look at when thinking about their overall strategy for engaging the public in their plan making. Wales has got a rather nice portal, nothing particularly new about that. We're seeing lots of portals developing, but they have interestingly describe things in terms of natural and other resources. So the sea is conceptualised, if you like, as a set of resources which MSP will seek to capture. Not just economic resources, but natural, social and cultural as well. So seascape, for example, is one particular aspect of this portal, which is a very interesting one, thinking about the cultural importance of the sea and the coast from a visual point of view. Scotland we heard a bit about this morning, so I won't dwell on this. But there it is again, just a few key points there. But let me move on just briefly here to England, where we have a specialised agency now, the Marine Management Organisation, responsible for a rolling programme of producing plans for 10 marine plan areas. And you can see on the map there where these lie more or less, and 2 of these on the North Sea coast have been completed now. I think one of the interesting things about the English experience, and which may be quite different to experience elsewhere, is that marine planning is taking very much of a policy-led approach. And what you will not find in the plans which are being produced for English waters are nice maps setting out the intended allocation of activities that you might find in certain other plans. What you will find instead are criteria that should be followed when it comes to marine licensing decisions. So the plans are in fact setting out the terms for future development rather than setting out precise spatial allocations. And that may not seem like MSP completely, but it is very much in keeping with the tradition of spatial planning, not just in England but in the UK as a whole. So that's something which is worth looking at if you are perhaps not quite sure about setting out spatial allocations for future use when there are great uncertainties in terms of those uses. Maybe a more criteria-led approach of this kind might be helpful. Let me just move on quite briefly to 1 or 2 North Sea countries. Belgium, again, has been one of the leading countries in experimenting, certainly, with different approaches to MSP. And one of the projects which has become very well known is the Gaufrey project, which took a very experimental approach in that it set out various scenarios for the future use of the Belgian part of the North Sea, and wasn't afraid to come up with, really quite adventurous scenarios, suggesting that the sea might be thought of primarily in terms of transport and movement on the one hand, or leisure and tourism on the other hand, and producing 2 very different scenarios based on those different ideas, and others as well. So there's a nice example for anyone who's particularly interested in building future possible scenarios and exploring different scenarios which might well feed into stakeholder activities as well. The Netherlands, again, we heard about quite a lot this morning, so I'll pass over this fairly quickly. Just got the map there. And again, some of the key projects that have taken place. Oh, just worth noting as well that the Netherlands is, of course, home of the MSP Challenge game, which is becoming very popular amongst people who have the opportunity to play it. And it gives players the opportunity to understand some of the intricacies involved in trying to somehow fit together different activities in a certain marine space. And then just to finish, I'll just mention briefly, of course, there have been transboundary projects as well in these 2 maritime regions. So in the Atlantic, for example, we've had a project called Transboundary Planning in the European Atlantic, which involved 4 member states in the Atlantic region. And I think one of the particularly interesting things to come out of that project was the importance of giving attention to good governance. That it's not just about bringing together data across borders, but also thinking in terms of how different authorities from across different borders should work together. And this was particularly interesting. I'm not quite sure. Oh, there we go. It is there. In the Irish context, that's to say between Northern Ireland in the UK and the Republic of Ireland, where they gathered together data straddling the border areas you can see here, but also thought very carefully about how to work together, how to cooperate. And the very action of bringing together stakeholders from both sides of the border was an important part of that. But also recognising the importance of wider policy contexts. So in this is a very particular context, of course, in that there is a peace process that has been ongoing for a decade. And the idea of actually cooperating in marine affairs was very much in line with that broader policy initiative. So in one sense, MSP was benefiting from a wider policy initiative of cooperation between these two countries and also contributing to it. Just to mention briefly, we have a follow-on project called SimKelt as well. And then in the North Sea, one of the main transboundary issues, as I mentioned earlier, is that of cooperation on a supergrid, very closely associated with offshore wind energy development. And this is something which has been industry-led, but has also received high-level political backing as well. And that's an ongoing process, which is very much alive. And clearly, this is something which will be of huge relevance to marine planning authorities as well. So if we could just summarise, I think the key thing that certainly that comes to my mind as I explore all these different initiatives going on in these two maritime regions is the importance of context. And if I might just pick up the question that came from our Danish colleague earlier, whether it's possible to have a framework for MSP, well, perhaps yes, there is, and we have the Framework Directive, of course, which does that to some extent. But I would urge caution in suggesting that MSP should be carried out in a similar way in different places, because I think it needs to be rooted very much in the particular policy context, the particular geographical conditions, the particular tradition of planning which applies in the place in question. That makes transboundary working more complicated, but ultimately I think will lead to more successful results if we understand the different backgrounds that we are each coming from when we seek to cooperate and work together.
Thank you, Stephen. Stay here, please. Because I think we should sort of, invite, questions to come. And just sort of as an announcement, I don't think that we will rush through the rest of Europe in sort of, 20 minutes. We started off late, so I think that we should give the benefit of sort of, running until, at least 20 to 5. So please, if there are any comments, questions to practices you may want to gain from that experience. No? Okay. Well, then, okay. Then, in fact, we should sort of move on now to the next geographic field. So I think we now move to the Mediterranean area. Yes? No? Black Sea? Oh, sorry. So then we sort of move first. Laura, please.
I had a presentation in the morning. I will be more directly now. So I need this. Speaking about Black Sea, it's a border sea of Europe at the eastern part. But by catchment area, it's connected with many countries in Europe, and also in the northern part has a lot of river impact and one small connection with the Mediterranean Sea. Regarding his name is not black, I said in the morning, but from ancient times it's called black because it's a very stormy sea, very dangerous, threatening, and have currents on horizontal and vertical and produce seasick like this. And maybe it's called black because it has a big stock of hydrogen sulfurate in the middle. This means that under 200 meters has not life. So I should speak that it is a place of diversity, not because it is surrounded by different countries with and and there are big differences and instability regarding ecological point of view, economical and political also. But regarding biodiversity, for example, in the Danube Delta, there are more than 5,000 species, similar with Amazonian region. Anyway, regarding the maritime spatial planning in the Black Sea, I could say that it's a very short history. Even we started based on science 10 years ago, grace to Planck Coast Project and Angela who led this. And we tried during last 10 years to develop out of ICZM, how we started, different kind of analysis on space, mappings, starting with thematical one and finalizing with integrated maps. But regarding the Black Sea countries, we should focus only on Romania and Bulgaria because they are the only member states. And our present project are focused on these countries, but also on a cross-border approach and relation with the other Black Sea countries. I think the best thing which could happen to us is this European MSP platform, because it supports all our present projects, which are Mars Plan, ECOST, and Mars Sea. And we started with the practices on this platform, which are also part of our projects. Many of projects developed till present, which were focused, some of them on database, some of them of data collecting, on fisheries, on economical inventory, are well known maybe by you, but also the present one on developing and also the future one are supported by this platform, which is extremely important for us. Keeping us in connection with Baltic Sea, with Mediterranean Sea, because Black Sea is part of Mediterranean Sea, and also with more developed countries and seas. You will find on the platform the fish of these countries and also the fish of the Black Sea. And you will find also our practices. There are not too many, but we are still customized with many things. Regarding ecosystem-based approach, for example, we can say that we elaborated according to all European directive related with the sea, all kind of habitats classification, maritime protected areas, also legislation regarding fisheries and navigation, tourism, all activities which are on our costs. We develop many study cases based on land-sea interaction. And also we explain different kind of processing like eutrophication and climate changes. And also we develop study cases related stakeholder involvement on different methodologies like sketch match. Regarding transboundary approach, we had the common project with Bulgaria, even we have not a border between Romania and Bulgaria yet. And with Ukraine, even Ukraine is not part of, is not member state. Regarding the both country, we can say that Romania has national authorities nominated this year, and starting with 2014, try to implement the directive in the official way, because before we worked like in exercise practices. In Romania, it is nominated the authority. This year, it is based on one national committee working together more ministries. And we developed also some project which proposed too many things related with the European MPC platform. This methodology started with the establishment of boundaries and continue with institutional framework, cooperation between Black Sea and the other countries in the Black Sea, cross-border with Bulgaria and Ukraine, and elaborating vision, strategies, common goals, and also based on wider dissemination of results, organize many meetings and many stakeholder approach. Till now, we elaborated the maritime spatial planning methodology, indicators and legislation taking into account all European directives, and also by Mars Plan project, which is under DG Mare umbrella also, it is necessary at the end of the project to elaborate on one MPS plan for Romania and Bulgaria together. Our study cases focused on land sea interaction and fighting against coastal erosion, stakeholder meetings, the ports harbor activities, aquaculture and marine fisheries, and the new ship routing system in territorial seas of Romania and Bulgaria supported more the development of this field in Romania. Our projects propose more things, and I'm very sure that for the present and for future, the European platform will be the best and the most important help, because we have not experience in lesson learned. We should elaborate one guidelines for good practices in maritime spatial planning. And also the aspect of strategies, visions, co-management, transboundary aspects are new for us. For sure, we have many examples of thematical maps, but also I told you we have a integrated approach now, and we share with Bulgaria the same aspects and the same experience. One of the main book for our application was the handbook for integrated maritime spatial planning, which was elaborated by Plan Cost Project in collaboration with the other countries. So our project are focused on initial assessment. Everything is on the sea, it's inventoried. The preparation of cross-border cooperation at governmental level and till the local stakeholders level. And for the future will be prepared the database and the all kind of methodologies and GIS applications. In Bulgaria, it's in preparing the authority. Also Bulgaria has national map and is involved in the sea basin maps. He is involved in all processes regarding land sea interaction and all kind of activities in maritime space developing. And we share together our information, our experience, and our application. Even everywhere in the world, the problem could be similar, and the inventory of them also. The solution and the approach and the measures must be similar. So the last slide is focused a little bit on the other countries, because on the Black Sea it's not obligatory this directive to be implemented, and also the other country worked on ICCM. The Black Sea Commission has a team on ICCM with all countries' representatives, And the activity of maritime spatial planning is involved in this committee and in this field. But our role, like ambassador and focal point, is to convince them and to meet them and to share our experience to make them understand how is better and which solution to be taken by them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Laura. And I think that, the presentation of Laura has shown, it was mentioned this morning in terms of the human dimension in MSP. And it's indeed true. We started working with Laura, really personally, I think it's 10 years ago in Plan Coast. But that is not, and she's really sort of our ambassador or our voice in the Black Sea. But what is important about this platform is really that you cannot always count on this fact that, the same people are staying in the same positions. And then it's very quickly that the memory gets lost in terms of what has actually been done already beforehand. What also has been shown, I think, is that, Stephen, you showed also GoFre, or there was the mentioning of Plan Coast, that also on the platform there is not the criteria. You can select practices by which is the most up-to-date one, but that may not always be a criteria of what is the most relevant one, that some of the practices seem to be, they come from sort of 10 years ago or so, a long time in the MSP history. And they're still very much relevant and very much sort of, in terms of methodology and still sort of, up to speed in a sense, Thank you. Are there any sort of immediate questions before we actually sort of give the benefit also to the whole Mediterranean?
I had a larger presentation in the morning and I try to not repeat what I said. First time.
But I think that, this also, there are there are quite a number of people here also around from projects. What is also shown now here in terms of the master plan is that so far, be it Interreg or the EU DG Mare funded project, the issue is that they are always sort of around different, in one sea basin. And that it's highly important to connect now in terms of transfer this knowledge from one project basis to another and to have that kind of connection. You don't need to have long-term projects for that, but it may be very helpful, and we already organized that with Jacek. Emiliano will come, but we will also continue to do so next year to sort of give targeted, to go there for two days and to sort of give its kind of, be it advice or support or help or whatever, to just exchange the experience directly for the Romanian case and Bulgarian case so that they can ask what is of relevance for them rather than having these big conferences, etc. Okay, so sorry, now the floor to our Mediterranean colleagues.
Yes, good afternoon. I will have the pleasure to share our presentation with Javier. I'm representing the MSP platform in the East Med, and Javier is representing the platform in the West Med, so there will be a ping pong between us during the presentation. Oops.
That's a real ping pong.
Yes. Let's go ahead. Okay, just an overview of what is the context. The Mediterranean is characterized by the presence of 8 EU countries, but we share commonalities with the Black Sea. There is a number of non-EU countries. Some of them, most of them are neither European countries. We can rely on a very relevant cooperation framework, starting from the Barcelona Convention that applies to the whole Mediterranean. That is the regional convention for the basin. It is important knowing that beside the convention itself, there's a number of protocols being legally binding for the countries of the Mediterranean, and one of them is specifically on ICZM, which is also attempting to include MSP somehow in the process of its implementation. There are two important initiatives which are driven by the European Commission. One is the EU strategy on the Adriatic and Ionian region, which is in place, and for which MSP is a really cross-cutting elements of the main pillars forming the core of the action plan and of the strategy. And the other one, I will give you shortly the word to Javier, because he's very much involved into its creation.
Okay, yeah. My name is Javier Fernandez. I is in Spain, and I'm like the focal point for the West Med. So you have the two sides of the room, the east and the west. I don't know if we're okay placed. We're on the contrary, but it's fine. The east meets the west and vice versa. So yeah, I'm actually really happy to be here because I'm coming with two hats really, because one is to be the MSP West Med correspondent or focal point, but on the other hand, we are as we speak helping the European Commission DG Mare in the preparation of the West Med maritime strategy. So for me and for us, it is very important to be here because as you perfectly can think, the West Med is looking actively into the champions in terms of maritime strategies, which are basically here in this part of Europe. So for us, it is really enriching experience to be here. Now, I will come back again to the West Med maritime strategy, but just to underline and to complement what Emiliano was saying, in the Mediterranean or for a Mediterranean scope, you can see the great interest in the blue economy sphere, and how we are both seeing, he and the Adriatic Union and myself in the West Med, how MSP is being always considered a key cross-cutting factor in order to make any planning or prospects for the future for better use of the sea.
Yeah, and another characteristic of the basin that there is a very limited application of the provision of the UNCLOS, which means that very few countries have really declared an EEZ, and there are a number of areas which are falling under disputation, including territorial water situation, which make things particularly complex even from an MSP perspective. We can overall say that the MSP process is at a really initial stage. There are not plans, with the exception of the Malta ones, and we'll come back on this later. But all the competent authorities have been identified, and the transposition of the directive is almost finalized in all the countries. Nevertheless, there is a wide experience which is project-based. There have been a lot of transboundary projects. I just mentioned some of them here in the slide: the AdriPlan and the SHAPE project in the Adriatic and Ionian region, and Talshore in the Aegean Sea and Levantine Sea around Cyprus. It is very important to say that what we can learn immediately from the Baltic experience is that those projects really suffered of not being really integrated into the formal process of MSP implementation, not able really to involve what are today the competent authorities. Fortunately, things are changing, and will change very, very quickly, because two new projects will be launched next year, early next year, one in the west, one in the east, involving all the MSP competent authorities. So really embedding the project into the national MSP formal processes. In terms of activities, we can definitely say that there are a lot of activities around in the Med. The most important one are coastal tourism, shipping, including different forms of shipping, the long and short distance shipping, but even cruising, which is really booming in the Mediterranean. Fishing, which is not only important because of economic revenue, but even for the social cultural implication it has in many of the countries. And aquaculture, and last but not least, oil and gas extraction. And as Javier said, there is high potential for blue growth, in particular in coastal tourism and aquaculture. All this is traduced in a tremendous pressure on the marine ecosystem, with a consistent loss of biodiversity, which is already occurring in the basin. Very quickly, we will go through all the different countries, highlighting some of the elements you can find in the platform. This is Italy. My my country, and I'm happy to say that they finalized the transposition of the directive very recently. There is a competent authority, which is the Ministry of Infrastructure and Transport, which is pretty different on what's happening in other countries where the competent authority is the Ministry of the Environment. That says quite a lot on the perception of the directive in Italy. What is interesting here is that anyhow competences are shared among different ministries. There is an interministerial coordination table, very high-level policy table, which will define guidelines for the process in the next year, and a technical committee involving a restricted number of ministry, which will have the specific task to elaborate the MSP plans. We can rely on a number of project-based experience that were implemented in 2014-2016 within the SHAPE project and the Plan project, developing a number of pilot plans and MSP exercise. And you can find a lot of this information in the platform. Also having some transboundary dimension, which is very important in the Adriatic-Ionian basin. In Slovenian, I would say that the most important things are two. First of all, there is an overall framework legislation, that's the Special Planning Act, which already includes in itself both land and sea planning. So a real new legislation for MSP implementation is not needed in the country. So they already started a number of preliminary activities. The specific characteristic of Slovenia, which also really deals very much with the existence of a Special Planning Act dealing with both land and sea, is that the marine area is very small. And it's very small, it's very crowded, and has a lot of interconnection with land. So for them, land-sea interaction is really an issue. And the two pilot plans, well, one is a pilot plan, one is a legally sector plan, that have been developed in Slovenia are really approaching land-sea interaction in a consistent way. This is, for example, the case of the plan for the port of Koper, which is a port plan, is an airborne plan. So it's not really an MSP plan, but they have some real MSP implication because they really focused a lot on analyzing interaction with other sectors. Tourism, not only shipping, but even aquaculture and fishery are most important occurring in the area. Somehow the same approach has been taken by Croatia, where again there is an overall unique plan, unique act dealing with both the land and sea planning, and that's the Fiscal Planning Act, which already included or includes in the current version a number of provisions which are set by the MSP directive, but amendments are in progress to accommodate the other provisions which are not included at the moment in the Fiscal Planning Act. Very relevant, in my view, is their effort in implementing the ICZM protocol, which is not very common actually for most of the countries of the Mediterranean. They're linking the implementation of the ICZM protocol with the implementation of the Marine Strategy Framework Directive, producing a joint program, a joint plan of both policy and directive. I also mentioned here another practice which is coming from the country, that's the Zadar County Plan for Mariculture, which very much focus on mariculture and both on sea, shell and shellfish and fish aquaculture, but also considering potential conflicts with other uses. Jumping to the south in Greece, the transposition is in progress. They are amending the special planning law, which again is the overall framework legislation which will accommodate even the MSP directive. Both are under consultation, the revision of the special planning law and the draft version of the transposing directive. Here it is worth mentioning that there are a number of sectoral plans on maritime activities, including aquaculture, tourism industry, and renewable energy, that will have to be taken in consideration when the real MSP plan will be developed in the next year by Greece. And lastly, from the EastMed Cyprus, also they are in the process of defining the the national legislation transposing the MSP directive, they rely very much on a project that was developed between 2013 and 2015. That's the Talshore project that developed a methodology for MSP implementation. So they already have a methodology in place. In that case, was working very well because the national competent authority was the coordinator of the Talshore project. And so there is a lot of continuity between the project and the formal process. And also they tested the methodology in the area of the southern coast of Cyprus, in the Limassol area, and also replicated the testing activity into highlands of Greece, of course, involving Greek authorities in that case that are Rhodes and Lesbos. Last but not least, they set a working group on MSP, which exists since 2014, that really prepared the ground for the implementation work that will occur in the next years.
Okay, out of the three WestMed countries, Spain, Malta, and France, we're in different scenarios of the project cycle. One country has transposed the directive, which is France. Another one, Malta, is about to do it. They're going to pass the act of legislation in very few time, as we were told. And in the third place, Spain is still in a more kind of embryonic stage. They have initiated the process creating a royal decree for transposition of the directive, and they put it into public consultation in the middle of summer. Surprise or surprise, nobody answered, or very few people from Galicia, some fishermen. So I heard when we did the interviews with the Spanish authorities for the purpose of the assistance. But anyway, for Spain, I think that what I would like to stress, apart from the fact that there are not currently MSP plans as such, which is a little bit surprising for such a big country with, as you can see there, with thousands of kilometers of coastline. But anyway, the interesting thing is that there's been an interministerial commission on maritime strategies which was set up, which is working. But what it is interesting is that for planning purposes is because of the high level of devolution of powers in Spain with the autonomous communities, which you will probably know about the territorial tensions in Catalonia or in Valencia or a region like Andalusia with 9 million people and almost 700 kilometers of coastline. So you can imagine it's like a country. Those regional governments have their own departments for planning. So sometimes when you need to take decisions at this level, in the same way maybe as the UK, maybe with a slightly more tradition in the case of Spain than in the UK, where the whole thing started in 1998 or something, if I'm not wrong. Well, it is important that you need to bring this layer of government into the whole process of planning and, of course, of the transposition of the directive itself. For France, as I said, it was recently transposed on 8th of August 2017. Maybe the interesting thing for you as practitioners in this field is that France has started applying MSP principles in like small zones along the coast, mainly through the so-called schéma de mise en valeur de la mer, which could be translated like sea enhancement schemes. And where they have done this, they have done this in heavily used areas, experiencing competition between various sectors. So, business as usual, the French are very smart people. And yeah, they for many years they have started thinking about this. No, so many uses of the same sea in the same spots. Let's do something about this. So they created already 1995, and then 2004, and the Tau Lagoon and the Arcachon Basin, which is very near Spain. We could have got some of it actually. And the Gulf of Morbihan and Trégor-Goëlo coast. In order for these schemes to be approved, they must identify a coherent geographical and maritime entity and define its perimeter. and it's depending on local specificities and context. This has been running for a while, and it's been the basis for the efforts of the French national government for the transposition of the directive and for setting up by the Direction Générale de la Politique de la Mer, which is again has a very long tradition in these affairs. Well, it's been used as a basis to do the transposition. And last but not least, the very small and tiny country, but watch out for Malta, because as you know, next semester the EU presidency will be held by Malta, and the commissioner for DG Mare of Maritime Policy Affairs comes from that country. So it might very well be that many things will be happening in that country. In fact, they're very well prepared. They're just about to pass the act of legislation, or maybe the representative from Malta told you yesterday something that has happened, not that I know. Michelle said that she will tell me immediately, but apparently it's not been the case. But as Emiliano said, this government has already set up this marine plan. There's a cross-cutting department in the government dealing with all maritime affairs and maritime planning, involving various departments of the government. And it might be an easier task because they're such a small and tiny country, but at the end of the day, I think it's a very good example of a team, of a government that has done things in the right manner in order to implement both the directive and also to plan in an effective way the use of the sea. If we finalize, I'm sorry because we are a bit late, but we knew it, Emiliano. We have selected 4 practices, so it will be a couple of minutes for each of them. Sorry, I promise. First one is the EU Maritime Strategy and Action Plan for the Western Mediterranean. So we are kind of not copying and paste the Baltic one, but we're looking at it in detail because I think we think that there's a lot to learn from the Baltic experience. We are, as we speak, assessing the possibility of working towards building this integrated maritime initiative and action plan. We are consulting with relevant stakeholders. We've been doing that for the last 6 months, and there are 4 areas where potential added value have been identified. One is, of course, on safety and security. West Libya, Italy, Tunisia, Morocco. You can imagine the smuggling, the people traffic, things very dodgy occurring. So the EU clearly sees an added value into working into that. Then there's another theme on skills and education. There's a lack of people with the right academic background and the right skills in order to work in this field. Then, of course, we have all the domain of innovation and RTD, and there, in principle, the Commission wants efforts to be focusing on the domain of aquaculture. Mainly, and then of course, regardless of the fact that the UNEP map has been working for a number of years in terms of environment, and the sustainability of the whole West Med is another key issue and another key area for potential cooperation. Finally, save the date if you can for the stakeholder conference to be held on 2nd of February 2017 in partnership with the Union for the Mediterranean in Barcelona, Spain. And another minute, we selected this practice because it brings together Morocco and the south of Spain. So this is planning and working together in between one EU member state and a partner country in Northern Africa. The Alboran Sea project, which was funded by the EU cross-border cooperation Spain-Morocco, sets up a geo portal of natural resources and biodiversity in the Alboran Sea, which is that sea that you see in the deep south of Spain. I'll give the floor to because I can continue now. It won't.
Yeah, another practice is the Adriatic Atlas supporting ICZM MSP that was developed within the SHAPE project. I will point it out that the most important thing of this atlas, beside all technicalities and use of the up-to-date technologies, is that it's still alive, it's still maintained and used by the owner, which is the Emilia-Romagna region. So that took the opportunity of the SHAPE project funded by the Interreg HIPA Adriatic program to develop a tool, which is at the Adriatic scale, of course, but that is also consistently used by the same regional authority to their, let's say, daily work in the coastal and marine planning and management. The last one comes from the Atroplan project. This is the Atroplan Cumulative Impact Tool that is available for any user, freely available on the Atroplan data portal, pending for an authorization, but that is given grant for everyone who requests it. That was used in the Atroplan, and you can see the map that was generated by the use of such tool, but can be even used by any other users. What is really interesting is that the National Research Council, who developed the tool, is still keeping the progress and the development of the tool, which is continually updated, and also in a way that is really an up-to-date tool. It also includes other output, not only the indicators on cumulative impact, but also on coexistence of uses and the analysis of data gaps. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, and thank also to the audience for sort of staying with us, and but especially thanks to our ambassadors from the platform. I think that you have all done a tremendous job, really acting as an ambassador for your sea basin, and through sort of this almost tour de force, going through all these MSP processes in the luckily still many European member states so far. I hope I have seen also that here there in the room there are quite a number of representatives from MSP authorities here from the Baltic Sea region that may have also inspired you to sort of, that when there are workshops, throughout Europe, etc., that, how one can sort of inspire each other and how we can really sort of exchange experience. But on that note, I think I still would like now to take the time for sort of, to open the floor to you in terms of what are your thoughts about sort of, in terms of the experience exchange, how one could sort of, continue on that line, what you would be interested in to do via this platform, via this assistance mechanism. So if you, please, any comments, any thoughts, any questions, the floor would now be still for you. Anita.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you very much for very interesting presentations. I have a question to the last speakers. I think I once heard you mention African states, but generally speaking, how much are you collaborating in the Mediterranean Sea with your southern neighbors? That interests me because also in the Baltic Sea area we have one non-EU country. So how much have you been collaborating?
Country you have.
Please.
Probably you have heard me, although for the Adriatic Union it's been a little bit so the case. For the WestMed strategy, this is a joint effort done by DG Mare and DG NIR. No? So the first reaction to your question is that when dealing with partner countries, as we call them, you automatically need to bring the Directorate General within the European Commission that deals with those who are next to us, which is the NIR. Having said this, in the WestMed, there's another intergovernmental organization which is very active. That's the UFM, the Union for the Mediterranean. Formally speaking, the European Union as a supranational organization forms part of the Union for the Mediterranean, which has a Secretary General, which is always rotating, now it is Jordan. And through that organization, these type of efforts and initiatives find I would say a very reasonably good or effective framework for action and for working and interacting together. And thirdly, and also linked to the engineer, as you know, there's a big part of the EU budget which is devoted to what we call the enlargement and neighborhood countries. And within that envelope, for the case of the Mediterranean or for the Western Mediterranean, there's this ENI, the European Neighborhood Instrument, CBC, Cross-Border Cooperation Program. And within the priority axis of this program, practitioners, authorities, the industry, and the academic world can find the means, the resources, in order to put forward ideas and cooperate with those who don't share the membership of the EU 27 or 2028.
Yeah, if I can add, the fourth element is the Barcelona Commission and the related convention that is signed by almost all the countries of the Mediterranean. They've been discovering MSP very lately, very recently, I would say a few months ago. As I said in the presentation, they've been concentrating very much on implementation ICZM, even because there is a protocol signed by the countries, by the EU, that has been ratified, and then it is legally binding for the countries. But they understood that the process of ICZM implementation has to go hand-to-hand with the MSP implementation, even because the same protocol defined the coastal areas as the areas that at least reach the limit of the territorial waters. So definitely there is some interesting in approaching planning of the sea, even in the Barcelona Convention, which is another arena of cooperation on the issue.
I would like to add also GFCM, which is a program for fisheries in the Mediterranean Sea, and cover also the Black Sea, because there is the same area. And also, I suppose each program on the basin take into account all countries. I speak now about the Black Sea. For example, it is a program which involves Armenia, Azerbaijan. So we take into account because we share the same resource, and we must come together on the table to discuss and take measures. Okay.
Thank you. So, are there more sort of thoughts about sort of the platform, or what you sort of got from that workshop here, from, sort of seeing the experience or the tools, etc., the practices from the other regions around Europe? So if that's not the case, then I would actually sort of really like to close this workshop. Thank you very much. I hope that this has sort of, inspired you to sort of have a look at the platform, but also then really make active use and actually, give a phone call. Now you see my face, but now you also have seen really the active faces. And Lucy, please stand up as well, in terms of our focal points. So if you have also a question, if you want to organize something, etc., please, I'm sure that you will not hesitate to sort of give a call to Lucy, Stephen, Javier, or Emiliano in order to know, and Laura, of course, to know more about MSP in those regions and how to interact. Thank you.
Thank you.